War is never just about weapons or numbers. It is about moments. Moments that define the course of history. Moments where everything stands on the edge of a knife, waiting for one decision to tip the balance. Some battles are fought with brute force, others with strategy. But the ones that truly matter, the ones that shake the galaxy, are won with something far greater. Belief, courage, desperation. The Battle of Yavin was one of those moments. At a glance, it seemed impossible. A ragtag group of pilots, barely trained, facing off against the most powerful war machine ever built. The Death Star was not just a weapon. It was a message. The Empire wanted the galaxy to understand that resistance was useless, that hope was a lie. It had already proven its power by wiping out an entire planet in an instant. And now, it was coming for the rebellion's last sanctuary. There was no negotiating, no escaping. Either the rebels stopped it, or they vanished forever. But that is the thing about oppression. The more you try to crush those who refuse to kneel, the more determined they become. The Empire had all the power, all the technology, all the numbers. But what it lacked was an understanding of what it means to fight for something real. The rebels were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting because they believed in something greater than themselves. And sometimes belief is enough to change the course of history. Most people think of Yavin as just another battle, just another explosion in a war full of explosions. But that is a mistake. This was not just a victory. This was the moment the galaxy changed forever. It was the first sign that the Empire was not invincible. The first time their iron grip on the stars began to crack. And the first moment a farm boy from Tatooine stepped onto the path that would lead to the greatest redemption the galaxy had ever seen. In this video, we're going to dive into why the Battle of Yavin was so important. We will break down the arrogance of the Empire, the sacrifices of the rebellion, and the hidden consequences of that fateful day. Because this was more than just a battle. This was the spark that ignited a war. The Battle of Yavin was not just another fight, it was the rebellion's final stand. The Empire had crushed every spark of resistance across the galaxy, and Yavin was the last ember burning. If that base was destroyed, the dream of freedom would vanish forever. The rebels knew this. Every pilot who climbed into their starfighter that day understood the stakes. They were outnumbered, outgunned. The Death Star was an unstoppable force of destruction, and yet they had one chance, one weakness to exploit. A narrow trench, a small exhaust port, and a pilot with the nerve to take the shot. But think about what that meant. A single pilot had to navigate through a swarm of TIE fighters, evade turbo lasers, and land a perfect shot with a torpedo. If he failed, everyone in that base would die. The weight of the entire war sat on his shoulders, and that's a burden no one should ever have to carry. And yet, that was the price of rebellion. Sacrifice was the only way forward. The men and women who flew into battle that day knew they might not come back. They fought anyway. They died anyway. Because if they didn't, the Empire would rule unchallenged forever. The Death Star was supposed to be invincible. It was the ultimate weapon, a planet killer. The Empire had spent years designing it, pouring in enough resources to build fleets of ships instead. But they were so blinded by their own power, they never stopped to consider the impossible. They had wiped out entire planets without hesitation. They had crushed every enemy in their path. They believed fear would keep the galaxy in line. But fear is never enough. The rebels weren't just afraid, they were angry. They were desperate, and that made them dangerous. The Empire's greatest flaw was its arrogance. Tarkin was warned. His officers told him the rebel fleet was approaching, but he laughed it off. He believed no force in the galaxy could touch the Death Star, and in that moment of overconfidence, he sealed his own fate. Because while he sat there, staring at the battle like it was entertainment, the rebels were fighting for survival. One man, in a small X-Wing, had the power to undo everything the Empire had built. And the worst part was, they never even saw it coming. It is easy to celebrate the rebels' success. They won. The Death Star exploded. But victory is never that simple. War is never that simple. Every pilot who didn't come back that day paid the price for the galaxy's freedom. Biggs Darklighter was one of them. He was Luke's closest friend, a man who had dreamed of flying for something greater. He died in that trench, buying Luke the seconds he needed. He never got to see the Empire fall. He never got to see peace return. His sacrifice was silent, unnoticed, but it mattered. Then there was Red Leader, a seasoned pilot who had seen too many battles. He made his attack run, fired his torpedoes, and missed. He never got a second chance. His ship was torn apart before he could even breathe. He died knowing he failed, never knowing that someone else would succeed. And that is the truth about war. Even when you win, you lose. The Death Star was destroyed, but the rebellion was left with empty seats. Lost friends, unfinished lives. Now the only thing they could do was keep fighting. Because stopping would mean their deaths meant nothing. The moment the Death Star exploded, everything changed. It wasn't just about a battle anymore. It wasn't just about survival. That explosion was a message, a symbol. The galaxy saw it, and for the first time in years, they believed the Empire could be beaten. Until that moment, the rebellion was small, a nuisance. A group of dreamers running from a monster they could never defeat. But after Yavin, they were something more. They had done the impossible. They had destroyed the weapon that was meant to keep them in fear forever. And that kind of victory spreads. Across the stars, people who had given up hope suddenly had a reason to fight again. They saw the Empire bleed. They saw weakness. And they realized they were not alone. The rebellion was not just a whisper in the dark anymore. It was a roar. But with victory comes danger. The Empire would not take this lightly. The Emperor would not let this stand. The rebels had earned their first real victory, but that meant the fight was just beginning, and the war was about to get even worse. Darth Vader was feared, but he was still just a weapon of the Emperor. At least, that is what everyone believed. He followed orders. He crushed his enemies. He hunted down the Jedi. But after the Battle of Yavin, something changed in him. He was there when the Death Star fell. He saw it happen. He felt it happen. And for the first time, he had no control. He had spent years enforcing the Emperor's will, believing the dark side had made him unstoppable. But he had just witnessed a single pilot, a nobody, bring the Empire's greatest weapon to ruin. And that wasn't just any pilot. That was Luke Skywalker. A name that meant nothing at the time, but a name that would soon haunt him. There was something in that boy, something familiar, something that made Vader stop and wonder. Was he really on the right side? That was the moment everything changed for him, the moment the dark side stopped feeling like the only path, the moment the cracks in his armor began to form. The rebellion won the battle, but they did more than that. They set the wheels in motion for the greatest redemption in history. The Battle of Yavin was not just a battle, it was the turning point of an entire war. It was the first moment the galaxy saw that the Empire could be beaten. It was the first time the rebels proved they were more than just a scattered resistance. The cost was high, many never returned. But their sacrifice changed everything. Without that battle, there is no rebellion. There is no future without the shadow of the Empire looming over it. That one moment shaped the course of history, and the impact went far beyond just the rebellion. It shook the Empire to its core. It forced the Emperor to see his enemies as a real threat. It forced Vader to question his path. And most of all, it gave the galaxy something it hadn't had in a long time. Because in the end, that is what the Battle of Yavin was really about. Not just victory, not just survival. It was about proving that no empire, no matter how powerful, is invincible. And that even the smallest spark can ignite a fire that burns across the stars. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to subscribe to Critical Analysis Hub for deep dives into the Star Wars movies. And check out Critical Analysis Hub Plus for case studies on Star Wars shows. Also, if you want to rep the fandom in style, check out the bio for awesome Star Wars Legos and Funko Pops. May the Force be with you. I'll see you in the next one.